This is Jody Reinhouse. I'm going to give as quick of a tutorial as I can while drinking my Ensure on the rising anti-American axis that's been forming for the past 10 to 20 years. It consists, the ringleader is China. It's China and Russia. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, which is like China's pit bull, Venezuela, which Iran has Quds force there. Venezuela's right here, and their country's in an uproar. Now, Persians in Iran, sorry for my shaky hands, I ran out of propanol. Persians, they could easily, the Quds force, it's a wing of the Iranian government that is responsible for foreign military operations. They look Spanish, so this caravan that's coming up through Mexico, if you have 10 of these guys, these Quds Force Iranian guys, equivalent to our special forces, if you remember, like mass shootings and stuff like that one guy in Las Vegas who was shooting down from the casino, from his hotel room. Imagine like 10 of those dudes, except they're like Navy SEALs, like Iran's version of Navy SEALs. But anyhow, and also Bolivia. Remember that is up in Bolivia. Our allies, nominally, Europe, but they've been cutting their budget so much. I don't know. Eastern Europe has our back. The problem is, if it focuses in Poland, I like Poland a lot. I don't think that they could muster enough troops. And then NATO even goes in here to Turkey. Alright, so first, let's deal with Europe. If Russia, by the way, this atlas is from the 70s. It's vintage, old school. If Russia, they've been doing this cyber warfare, or not, cyber warfare, yes, but this hybrid warfare in which they send in the core of their military, maybe a couple 100,000, just the core of their military, like the best of the best. They're stacked up, and they look like our guys out in the field in Afghanistan. They're all geared up. Take 500 of those guys and go into, let's say, Latvia, right here. Little tiny speck. I bet most Americans have no idea what Latvia is, where it is. Latvia is in NATO. All these Baltic states are in NATO. So let's say that Russia moves 500 troops into Latvia, 10 miles, and they just set up camp. And they sit there, and they don't do anything. They don't fire a shot. What the fuck? Latvia is immediately going to declare Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which stipulates that an attack on one is an attack on all, based on collective security. Are we really going to muster an army or armies that under NATO command? It'd be really America. It'd be like us with like small contingents. Are we going to want to go fight the freaking Ruskies over Latvia? That's why they're doing this weird hybrid warfare, like in Ukraine. Ukraine's a mess right now. They seized Crimea, and then eastern Ukraine, they're fighting a war. It's not talked about much in the media, but right here, they're fighting a war. And they recently had an issue with, the Ukrainians had 3 of their vessels, 2 of which were naval vessels, fired upon by the Ruskies, the Russians, Soviets. And some Ukrainian sailors were wounded, and their vessels were captured, and they're still being held. Today's the 6th. It's about to be the 7th. What would we do? Okay? So that's Russia. That's the threat to Europe. And we'll talk real quick about the Shiite Crescent. Alright. Iran is Persian. These guys are all Arab. These Arabs, including Egypt, tend to be Sunni. Iranian Persians, they get pissed off if you mistake them for a Arab. Kind of like how an Ecuadorian would be upset if you called them a Mexican. So Iran, the Persians, they're mostly Shiite. And you do have Shiite Arab populations like in southern Iraq, the Alawites in Syria. And through finances, through militias, Iran, to fight ISIS, they sent about 100,000 militias, or 100,000 troops. I believe they were called the Popular Mobilization Units. And, sorry. The 100,000 consists of like 30-something militias, of different power. And right now they're militarily and soft power. They've bought off politicians in Iraq. So, Iraq is kind of like, a client state of Iran. So Iraq's covered. Syria, Iranian troops, generals have been fighting, have been getting killed. They've been getting bombed by Israel. In Syria, in the Syrian civil war, we have a token force right here at Al-Tanf. It's a little dirt. There's only 5 crossings from Iraq into Syria, and this is all vast nothingness desert right here. And Al-Tanf is about right here. It's one of the 5 official border crossings, and the quote highway leading up to it is just a dirt road. So we have, we're with the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurds, who I really like. We have Special Operations Forces here, along with the British, and I think, Lithuania, is one of the Baltic states I was just talking about. And, because this blocks Iran. Iran wants a land bridge. It's called the Shiite Crescent. The Persian Empire version 3. Because you have the Persian Empire of old, fought by the Greeks, and then Alexander the Great. And then you have the Parthians. They beat Rome. They were kind of like peer competitors. They beat Rome in a major battle, but then Rome came back and beat them in a major battle. So this would be V3, New Persian Empire. It would stretch through Iraq. It does. It's pretty much de facto. It would stretch through Iraq, Syria, and down into Lebanon. That's where Hezbollah is, which is a pretty powerful militia that's funded by Iran, created and funded by Iran. So Iran, and you have a flashpoint with Israel. You got a real flashpoint. Turkey's involved in all this, in Syria. Syria is non-arguably the most complex battle space in the history of humanity. Just take into account the Cold War implications. During the entire Cold War, the Soviets and the United States never had troops in theater fighting each other, except during the Korean War, where we had airspace encounters and we would fight dogfights. Generally speaking, we would support one group. We would keep our troops out. Except we'd probably have black ops and stuff, but officially troops out. And then the other side, the Soviets, they would prop up their army. Well, in this case, we have troops here, publicly declared. We have 2,500 troops, mostly Special Operations Forces, which is a huge force multiplier. That makes 2,500 troops into like 5,000 troops because they're supported by massive American air power. We have a Marine Expeditionary Unit and an aircraft battle group stationed here in the Red Sea, and they unloaded advanced artillery into Syria to take out Raqqa, which we leveled and taking from ISIS. But Russia did a lot worse, bombing Aleppo and Dahaya. They just leveled it. They carpet bombed it. Anyhow, Shiite Crescent, that would give Iran access to the Mediterranean. It would give Iran much greater control over the Persian Gulf. Obviously, Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, they're kind of forming like an Arab NATO. They recently held war games here in Egypt. Saudi Arabia sent troops. Oman sent troops. They're having a tiff with Qatar, so they did not send troops, but the United Arab Emirates sent troops. There's too much bullshit going on in Yemen for them to send troops. But you can see how strategic this waterway and who is and who controls it. But they just had war games in Egypt, so it's looking like some kind. And this idea has been floated by the United States and by the Saudis for a long time because they're afraid of Iran. See, when Saddam Hussein was in power in Iraq, they both feared each other. It kept things in check. Iran was not an issue. Now that Saddam's gone, we hang him from a tree after helping him use chemical weapons against the Persians, the Iranians, during their decade-long war in the 1980s. After we helped him use chemical weapons, deploy them against the Iranians, then we hang him from a tree. You believe that? So now I guess Saudi Arabia has replaced this. The new prince in Saudi Arabia seems like he's a real hardcore guy. He's doing a lot of modernization, including in their military. So Iran versus Saudi Arabia. And Israel, if somebody hits Israel, we got their back. No one's going to mess with Israel because we got their back. And they're reinforcing the northern border with Lebanon and Syria. Jordan also has got our back. They're cool. All right, so that's what's going on in the Middle East. All right, now we're going to hit this up. We're going to go over here to Asia. Okay. America is like, they say that we're like not an empire and stuff, but we are. We're a shadow empire. Our client states, de facto, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, even though the they can be a prick sometimes, or he seems like it. Australia is not as dependent on us, and Papua New Guinea, we're about to make a new naval base for Australian U.S. troops to operate in. China, their land territory ends right here. They are saying that this entire ocean right here, the South China Sea, is theirs. Normally, for a country, their sovereign territorial waters extend 12 nautical miles off of their coast. This does not span 12 miles off. This is more like 600 to 900 miles. They're claiming all this. I think it's over 1 million square miles of what is now or was international waters. It's legal to go through. And by the way, I think it's 1/3 of the world's trade goes through this area. China has this on lock now. See where I'm pointing? Down here, you have like the Spratly Islands and stuff. Well, they made them up. I mean, they were like ridges, like reefs, barely sunken, and the Chinese came in and they dredged up sand and they put them there, and they built it up. They've been building it up. It started, I believe, under Obama, so they had a solid 8 years to build up, and Obama didn't do shit. And right now we are doing freedom of navigation exercises, where we essentially, and we do this to other countries too, we challenge when countries say this is my territorial waters, we will challenge them and like send like a destroyer through. Well, we've sent destroyers through recently. We've sent frigates through. The Brits sent a frigate through. We've been flying B-52s over it. We've been flying aerial reconnaissance over it. I believe Vice President Pence was in one of them, kind of like just to give him the middle finger. And we recently sailed an aircraft carrier battle group, which is extremely powerful. It's an aircraft carrier with, say, 90 aircraft and helicopters on it. And then it has 4 or 5 escort ships, destroyers, supply ships, sea lift, airlift, and we have 11 of them. So that they have to watch out for that. China has, and by the way, we recently we ran that aircraft carrier battle group, which is like the ballsiest thing you can do. We recently put that through the South China Sea. And keep in mind, this trade war is going on with Beijing. So they're like seeing all this shit going on in North Korea, like the denuclearization and all that. So China's like, what the fuck is going on? That's why we want Trump for 2020. We want this progress to continue. And General Mad Dog Mattis, the scholar monk. So, and we recently held war games with 2 of our 11 aircraft battle groups off of the coast of the Philippines, which I'm sure China was not too happy about. There's talk of a quad alliance. It'd be Japan, India, and I talked to my boy Depender at my pharmacy. He agreed. He's off the boat. He was like, and he's very, very intelligent. He said that India does not like China. China does not like India. And if a war broke out, India would be on our side. Which is why they're part of the Quad Alliance. Or would be if this comes to fruition. I think it already has. So, Japan, India, the United States, and then Australia. Because Australia has a stake in this. Those crackers down there, these are all Asian, you know, and all that. And a bunch of freaking white Australians down there. A bunch of badasses beating the shit out of each other for no reason. So, the fear from China is that they would do some kind of a Pearl Harbor style missile blitz and launch hundreds, maybe thousands of missiles at all of our bases in Japan and Guam, Marianas, our troops in South Korea, like, you know, a massive missile blitz. Or if we were to challenge them officially, if this shit gets out of control, any kind of military conflict with China, which I believe is going to happen in the next 5 years, would probably at this point, at this juncture, revolve around the South China Sea. So it all depends who is in the White House, who is the president. Do we have the political will to fight a war, giving it to the generals, not micromanaging it like Obama? Do we have the political will to fight the war, and do we have the public on our side? So that's what's going on in Asia. If we lost in Asia, don't get me wrong, any war with China would be devastating for both countries, but we're fighting on the periphery of our shadow empire, the first island chain. And we've been activating bases over here that we haven't used since World War II. That's just disperse our forces in case they do a missile blitz. It's all about precision ballistic missiles now, cruise missiles. So, man, I forgot my train of thought. So China's, you know, surrounded with this Quad Alliance thing. I can get more into that later. So that's Asia. If they kicked us out, it'd be a naval/aerial conflict using weapons that they stole from us. Yeah. I like these pages to try to make this quick. These are all the places I've been. Miami, obviously. Key West. Fayetteville. That's Fort Bragg. Murphy, North Carolina. Asheville, North Carolina. Chicago. Sparta, Illinois. East St. Louis. Los Angeles. Santa Barbara. San Francisco. I want to go out to Colorado. But anyhow, that's what I got. Regarding Venezuela, like I said, those guys can learn Spanish and they could easily move up into our country. So that's a threat in the Western Hemisphere that we are trying to get Brazil on our side right now, with their new president, who is kind of like Trump. I'm not sure a whole lot about Brazil's military, but if we could get them on their side for the Western Hemisphere to reinforce the Monroe Doctrine, that's what we need, because Venezuela has essentially Iranian troops in Venezuela nobody knows about. This shit's been going on for a decade, and things get blacked out from the media. Just to give an example, 2 guys were caught trying to enter the United States through across Texas, and turned out they were Syrian refugees, and they were affiliated with ISIS. This also happened up here. They tried to move. There were a group, I think 3 military-age men, also Syrian refugees. Sorry about the quality and the fuzziness. Also, Syrian refugees, they were caught trying to get into New York, and they also affiliated with ISIS. Both of these stories have since been blacked out. You can try to find them. It's kind of interesting. But, you move, just say that they're equivalent to U.S. Navy SEALs. Move 10 of these guys and disperse them across the country or do one major attack. Think of Mumbai in India, where 5 gunmen spread out across the city and killed hundreds and hundreds of civilians. For some reason, when I hold it like that, you can actually see it. But you can get Brazil to counter Venezuela. They got the South flank. We control the world. We control, the client empire. We have the backs of Israel and the Sunni Gulf states against Iran. We got the crackers in Australia. We got the chinks up here. We're pretty well stacked. The question is, how much can we really count on our allies? Europe's been demilitarizing for all intents and purposes. Japan has a stacked military. They changed their constitution. Before, they could only have a pacifist military. Now it has changed to where they are allowed to launch offensive operations if they so choose to. South Korea, we have 30,000 troops. Japan, we have 30 to 50,000 troops. And the Philippines, believe it or not, we have many thousands of special operations troops. We just began a permanent Marine rotation in Australia. We're opening up a new naval base in Papua New Guinea with Australia and Japan, Papua New Guinea and us. In Germany, we have 50 to 60,000 troops, to my understanding. We have so many bases around the world, it's completely insane. And I don't know how much is blacked out. But we have troops in Guam, the Marianas. We have shit dotted everywhere, all over the place. And we have, over here, Japan's a good ally. And I'm talking about in terms of military capabilities and economic strength. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan. Taiwan could be an interesting distraction. India, they have a shit ton of troops if they want to do human wave tactics. Australia, they would use knives. They wouldn't even go in with guns. They would just have freaking knives. Which, by the way, there's a lot of knife attacks in China. For all you people who are anti-gun, in the western part of China, there's this group of Muslims, and the Chinese have been rounding them up lately and putting them in concentration camps. But they've done knife attacks in the past. 5 people will go into a train station, and they'll start hacking people up. And they'll kill them. So, if you think about getting in somebody's face with a knife and hacking them up, that's really, really bloody. So, those are the people that we have to worry about. The World Atlas. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Bolivia. Hezbollah, technically a non-state actor, but they're just a branch of Iran. Flashpoints would be Israel inside Syria fighting Iran. Flashpoints would be the South China Sea and Taiwan. Flashpoint would be Russia's capabilities in terms of doing a cyber war, a hybrid war, an asymmetrical war in Europe. And then Venezuela, where you have the Persians moving up, sneaking in through with these caravans. If you have 6,000 people in one of these, quote, migrant caravans, 6,000, just imagine, just say 2% of them are Iranian military, Hezbollah. It's really quite disturbing. You won't hear a lot about this on the news. Got my bear mace here because I saw a fucking coyote in the backyard. It's Miami, and I don't want my pit to get hurt, so I have a freaking bear mace. Now this shit's almost 25 minutes. Now I'm curious, how many people have actually sat and watched this? That's my Ensure Plus. How many people have sat and watched this? I want to know. So either hit me up, leave a comment, like it. This is just a social experiment. I'm curious personally. How many people watch a 25-minute lecture? I moved as quick as I can. I miss a lot of shit. I could go into more detail in different areas, but I'm trying to give a general holistic overview. The Trinity 444, 2444. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any comments, if you disagree, if you agree, let me know. I'm open to feedback. and it's now the 7th. I gotta sleep soon, Holmes. Alright, hit me up. 305, Miami, Liberty City, Uncle Court. No sirens today at all. None. It's a good day. So, alright, bud.